amphibians are organisms that can live in water and on land. For this reason, they possess features that enable them to survive both on land and in water. In this lesson you will look at the external features of African toads and frogs. Toads and frogs belong to the phylum Chordata and class Amphibius since they share many characteristics in common. But due to slight differences in their characteristics, the common toad belongs to the family Benthiidae while the frog belongs to the family Rhythneidae. External features of common African toad. The common African toad, Bufo regularis, has streamlined body with wedge-shaped head and trunk. It is bilaterally symmetrical. The body is covered with moist or wet loose-fitting and warty skin which is highly vascularized for gaseous exchange. The skin is usually brown or grayish-brown in color, with the dorsal section of the body being darker than the ventral section. Its color changes to match the color of its environment for camouflaging against predators. In the skin has mucus-producing glands that secrete watery fluid through tiny tubes to make the surface of the skin slimy. The body is divided into head and trunk with no neck. The head is wedge-shaped or triangular with bluntly rounded snout. On each side of the head is a large protruding eye with upper and lower eyelids, but only the lower eyelid is mobile. In addition, the lower eyelid has a transparent fold of skin called nictitating membrane. The nictitating membrane is used for cleaning and moistening the eyes and protecting it against the glare of the sun when the toad is on land. In water, it protects eye against mechanical injuries. The eyes protrude high above the head to give the toad an advantage of wide angle of vision. It has a wide-gaped mouth, which extends from side to side along the anterior end of the snout. The mouth is used for ingesting food or catching prey in a hole. Attached to the front of the lower jaw in the buccal cavity is a long, sticky tongue that is stretched out to catch a prey during feeding. Above the mouth and in front of the eyes are two external nares or nostrils which lead into the nasal passages for the inlet and outlet of air during gaseous exchange. Behind and slightly below each eye is a circular patch of tightly stretched grayish membrane called eardrum or tympanic membrane, tympanum. The tympanic membranes are used for hearing both in air and in water. The ventral surface of the head forms the floor of the mouth cavity which rises and falls along whilst breathing. The skin in this part of the body is loose and may, in male toads, be inflated by dark-colored vocal sac. The head joins directly onto their trunk without a neck. The trunk of a toad is short and flattened with no tail. Located on the dorsal surface of trunk behind the eyes are two rough glands called poison glands. The poison glands secrete sticky, whitish distasteful substance to protect the toad by warding off predators. Attached to the trunk are two pairs of limbs. They consist of a pair of short, stout forelimbs. Each forelimb is divided into upper arm, forearm and a hand. It ends in four unwebbed digits. At the base of the index and middle fingers of the males are cushion-like swelling called nuptial pads, which is for clasping around the female during mating. The forelimbs are used for absorbing shock of landing during hopping and for steering during swimming. The pair of hindlimbs are longer, stronger and more muscular than the forelimbs. Each hindlimb is divided into thigh, shank and foot, which ends in five partially or slightly webbed digits. The webbed feet of the toad are flat and provide large surface area for effective swimming in water and for hopping on land. The posterior end of the trunk is broadly rounded with no tail. Between the hind limbs and dorsal surface of the posterior end is an opening called vent or cloaca. The cloaca is used as a passage for feces, urine, sperm in males and eggs in females. The male toads are smaller in size than the females. External features of frog. The body of a frog is shorter, broad, angular and pointed at both ends. Its body is covered with very thin, moist and loose skin, which is very rich in blood supply. This is for effective gaseous exchange, since the frog spends most of its time in water. The skin contains numerous mucus glands that secrete mucus through tubes to the surface of the skin to make it slimier and more difficult to hold, since frogs have more predators than toads. Head. Unlike toads, the head of a frog is more pointed to enable it swim through water easily. It has small teeth on the upper jaw and the roof of the buccal cavity. The teeth are used to prevent its prey from escaping during feeding. Trunk frogs and toads have many similar external features with a few differences due to the environment in which they are mostly found. Like toad, the frog has two pairs of limbs on the trunk. The pair of forelimbs are short and weak with each having four unwebbed toes with soft rounded tips. The inner toes of the male frog's forelimbs are enlarged to form nuptial pad, especially during breeding season for clasping around the female during mating. The forelimbs of a frog are used to prop up or raise the body on land during resting and absorb shock of landing after a leap. The hindlimbs are well developed and adapted for swimming and leaping. The thigh and calf have well developed and strong muscles, with the ankle region and toes greatly lengthened, making the foot longer than that of the lower leg. Lying throughout between its 5 toes of each hindlimb is a flexible web membrane. This makes the digits of the hindlimbs fully webbed, whereas that of the toad are partially webbed. Differences between toads and frogs. Frogs are more pointed and narrower at both ends, streamlined, than toads. Frogs are lighter in weight than toads for efficient swimming, since frogs spend more time in water than toads. The skin of toads is rough, less slimy and warty, while that of frog is slimier, soft and moist. The hindlimbs of the frogs have fully webbed digits, hence provide large surface area than that of toads, which are slightly webbed. The hindlimbs of frogs are longer, more muscular and stronger than that of toads. Frogs have simple teeth on the upper jaw and the roof of the mouth, but toads lack teeth in the mouth. The digits of the forelimbs and hind limbs of frogs have rounded tips, while those of toads are pointed.